Okay, so I'm actually second generation because my dad also went to residential school. He went to Kokalitsa, and that was a really bad place to go to for boys. So we moved to Prince Rupert, and that's when, like I was 7, so they sent my older sister, my older brother, and myself to Port Alberni to a residential school. And there was a couple of buses that started off in Prince Rupert, and we picked up a couple more buses in Terrace. And I'm not really sure how many more buses from Prince George. But anyway, there was quite a few buses heading down to Vancouver area. One of the buses would stop off at Lytton around there, because I think there was a residential school there, I'm not really sure. And then another one around Mission area. And when we go over to the island, one would head up to Allard Bay, and there's always about 2 heading to Port Alberni that had all the native students in there, and there's usually like about 3 to a bus chair. So that was how we end up going to the Port Alberni Indian Residential School. Since, like I said, my abuse had happened before I went to the res, so I always just used the residential school to hide amongst the other girls. But I always made sure my bed was away from the doors, because that's when like the men would come in and sexually abuse the girls where their beds were closer to the exit doors. So I really didn't I knew I was scared of this one sound where it, to me it was always like a basketball bouncing. It always sounded like it was coming from under my bed. And it would be bouncing really hard, and then all of a sudden it would just stop. And that's the part that kind of scared me. So it wasn't until later in my life that I knew what was happening to those girls. But with me, it was always like fights. I got in a couple of fights, and I was getting hurt. It seemed like I got hurt quite a few times, like skating. There was always like a pond just below the residential school where we'd all go to skate. And it wasn't like a really smooth. It was like it had like tufts of grass and rocks sticking out. But I remember, like, I was just going over it once, and then I must have tripped while I was going pretty fast, and then I slammed my head on the ice. It was pretty bad because I must have blacked out, because I don't remember how I got out of there. Like it just almost like a snapshot, like a snapshot of me laying there, and then then I don't know what happened after that. And another time was one of those, like somebody was teaching us how to use one of those trampolines. It was like a big long one. So I do remember there was 3 of us on there one time, and I like one of the girls came down and went like this, and then as I was coming down, it made me bounce right up, and then I remember slamming down onto the cement, because that was like the pavement cement, and then my head slammed back again. And another, like, I don't remember what happened, or if I even went to the infirmary, or and another time is I got in this one fight with this girl from Bella Bella. She picked me up and like the beds, there were those metal ones that had, goes down.
Yeah.
She took me in my back. I remember hearing this snap.
Mm-hmm.
One of the other girls that was there, and she's actually here, was telling me, she said, I was the one that heard the snap in your back. So, like I had a hip replacement, and I do remember that the one that they had to put a big needle, but they couldn't get through. So I figured something happened at that time. But the same thing, I don't remember, what happened right after it. Yeah. But I do remember, like, kids would run down the stairs, and I'd always move to the side until they went by, and then I'd go down the stairs. So.
In school, when you were there, were they girls and boys in the same school?
No, the girls were on one side and the boys were on the other. Like, I don't even, the girls, even though the girls were on the one side, but I never remembered my older sister. Like, I never was able to hang out with her or, go see her, because she was a couple of years older than I was, so her dorm was different than my dorm. So, yeah, I never got to see her. I never got to see any of my brothers. Not even, like, the only time the boys and the girls were together was like lunch, supper, breakfast. But we'd always still be on, different sides of the room. So basically, like, and I do remember, like, they'd always, like how the people were strapped and everything. Mine was like they'd hold my hand behind my back and push up, So that, I remember that always hurting. So, yeah, I was, what is it, I think I was 13 when I left. Because after that I boarded out with the couple. She was First Nations. It was a Watts family from Port Alberni. She married a non-native, Dennis Nicholson. And that's where I learned, how families interacted together. Like every time we went home for the summertime, my dad would be always fighting. He'd always beat up on my mom. I hated the summertime because the berries were out. They made home brew, and I hated that. Like, I do remember before I went to the residential school, I loved winter time because it actually, like my dad, he was actually a good man before stuff happened. But by the time I boarded out, I knew what I didn't want. I didn't know what I wanted, but I knew what I didn't want. So when I boarded out with Barb, like, I knew what a family was like. I knew she could hug her children without sexually abusing them. She disciplined them, told them, what was right and wrong. I didn't know, but listening to her, although she did use a wooden spoon all the time on her children, which I didn't really like. I think I remember hiding that spoon one time. And he never touched her. He never beat her up. They never went out drinking. Well, they went to a party, but they'd always come back, seemed like they'd be sober, So, yeah. And when I left there, I boarded out with them from when I was grade 8 till I was 11. grade 11, sorry. So by then the residential school was closed down, and like my brothers and sisters weren't with me, so I quit school in grade 11 and went home. Went back to Prince Rupert. We always have food on the table. That's the one thing that I've picked up from my dad, is that I used while the girls were growing up, is that before we went out, I'd always make sure we'd buy food. Hydro was paid for, whatever's left, then we'd go out. Because, you know, I didn't become a model citizen, you know. I didn't like men and I didn't trust them. So I remember like 15, 16, 17, I just wasn't interested in. So the thing with Laddie is that he didn't do that. It's like, you know, he just, sure, I went with him to his room, but he never did anything, you know. We just talked. Wrote letters. I think it was like about 4 months. Until finally I started hitchhiking down here to see him, and still before that he'd always come to Port Alberni. I had been staying with Barb then, because I used to just move all over the place. So I was staying with her, so we'd write letters back and forth. Until finally I just hitchhiked down here. It was a little weird because Laddie's sister Beverly was the one that picked me up and drove me right to where he was working. And so that's how we started. He still didn't do anything, you know, so it's made me kind of want to stick around.
I'd like to say that you're a model citizen now.
Well, I wasn't always, you know,
but
a couple of times I would end up in Skid Row.
Yeah, but today is different.
Well, it took a while. You know, it wasn't even like when we started having children, we still drank. Like we drank, like every weekend we'd go out. Well, when in the 80s, it always had like, I forgot, like fetal alcohol syndrome. I remember reading about that, you know, and when I got, like, all I knew is I didn't want to have any children and put them through what you know, have them go through what I did, so I just didn't want any kids. So when I met Laddie, it was like 3 years, we were like drinking, we kind of meshed in our dysfunctionality, so, you know, so it wasn't until, like I said, a girlfriend had, you know, we should get pregnant together. You know, it wasn't Laddie that said it was just because I didn't want any. But I said, okay, sure. So they're like a month apart. So, yeah, so that's how, and with that fetal alcohol syndrome, I just knew I didn't want my baby to have that, so I stopped drinking. And I made Laddie stop drinking, so 9 months we stopped drinking. Well, before that too. So it's just something that I read and I knew I didn't want. Well, we never started drinking again until Samantha was like 8 months, you know. I don't know if you wanted to call it being a model citizen. I don't really think so, because I just knew I didn't want a fetal alcohol syndrome baby, because, you know, it's something I read. The way I look at it is I'm a little better than the way my mom was, and I'm pretty sure the girls are better than the way I am.
I'll always remember that you are a good person, and I thank you for.
Oh, I was like, well, it's, you know, like I said, I knew what I didn't want, you know, And I've made a lot of mistakes in my life, you know. But,
Yeah.
and I think the one thing that really helped was reading. I read a lot, you know, not just cowboy books. I remember reading to my brothers, I think, like during the residential school, like they were really interested in educating us. You know, sure, they made us speak English, you know, I picked that up right away, just like Marge had mentioned, because you know, if you get beat up enough, you learn something, you know. But I'm in no way a good person still. You know, well, it's like, I guess I have my own beliefs of what I think is right and wrong.
Yeah.
But I can still enable people, you know.
Well, thank you for sharing. And I wish you well. And yes. And I'm sure the viewers too will enjoy watching this and learning a lot from people. There's a lot too, and everything, and it takes a strong person like yourself to be able to share things. So I thank you for that. And I'm Bill Williams, and this concludes another interview. Thank you.
True.
True.